Larsen of Denmark playing white against Hein Donner of Holland playing black. And some of the most charming games we've had in the whole of these series have been played between these two. Tonight is really the last chance for both of them to have any opportunity of going through to the final and qualifying for the first prize of £2,500 and the Master Game Trophy. As we can see from the board, a win really is essential for either. Should they draw, then we could have a four-way tie, but in fact a win would put either of them clear leader in this group so far. With me, as usual, Bill Hartston to give his expert analysis and views. Bill, what's happened so far because the game has started?
Well, strangely, it's exactly the same as the opening of Larsen Schmidt a few weeks ago, another Queen's Gambit.
And they've both played the same moves?
Exactly the same for the first 7 moves.
Right, well, let's join the game with Larsen White having just played bishop from f1 to d3. Let's see what Donner's reply is going to be as black.
That is not what the theory says. Now I have a cheap possibility to get my knight to e4. Perhaps it will be changed there, but I like it in this early stage to have a knight there. Knight to e4.
Well, that was not what Lothar Schmidt played in the same position. My next move is obvious, so I think later. Bishop takes e7.
And the queen has to take back.
In 1955, in Göteborg, in the interzonal, Bronstein played bishop takes e4 in this position against Stahlberg. But I like more to keep that as a threat. Bishop e4, bishop takes e4, it's not bad. The black bishop is hemmed in by some of the black pawns on white squares. But let's see what he does. If I can make him exchange on c3, I take with the pawn and enjoy more pawns in the center. Queen c2.
Yes, I can go back with the knight to d6 perhaps, because I'm not sure whether he can take at h7. But I prefer to defend the knight at e4 a move later. I must be careful. d5 is also en prise, and my bishop at c8. But I use the bishop to protect the knight another time.
Well, I also think my next move is rather obvious. Then with knight e2, I keep the possibility to play f3, and maybe the knight will go to g3, and knight e2 looks better than knight f3. Yes, no doubt. I could also take on e4 again, but I may do that next time. Knight ge2.
Yes, I see. The knight goes to g3, and then I have to give up my stronghold at e4. But I don't mind. I play the knight to d7.
Now I have a choice. I'm still comparing with that Bronstein-Stahlberg game, because they are in a similar position. The black knight went to a6 and gained a tempo with the threat knight b4. So maybe now I should take on e4. He probably takes with the bishop. I take again. He takes with the queen. Then I like it very much. That pawn is a weakness in that ending, the advanced pawn on e4. But he takes with the pawn, and what have I got? Not so clear. He can defend that pawn on e4. Now I think I'll do the other thing. I like when my pawns capture towards the center. Knight g3.
Well, an optimist could consider that a weakness there at g3. I take the knight off. I hardly see anything else. Knight takes g3.
And h takes g3. No reason to think.
Yes, of course. And again, my move is forced. Bishop takes d3.
Queen takes d3.
Now I must be careful that g4 is in the position. That is a positionally strong move. f3 and g4 gives him something. The most obvious is knight to f6, but I prefer g6. Then I have both possibilities of f5 and h5. First, I want to have the squared f5 under control, so I play g7, g6.
Now I don't know which side I want to castle to. g6 was a funny move. If I castle queenside, he probably does the same. If he does it immediately, then I could go on with g4, but I'm not sure what that is. Knight f6 and he plays h5. I don't think I get anything. And if I have to play f3, he gets pressure on the e-file against my pawn on e3. The healthy plan is probably to attack with the pawns on the queen side, and that means I don't castle to that side. Maybe I don't need to castle immediately. If I play b4 immediately, that's a famous trick in such positions. If he takes with the queen and rook b1, I have to be careful that my rook does not get trapped on b7. He moves the queen to a5, I take on b7, he moves knight b6, but the rook is not in danger. It's very strong up there. It is very tempting to play b4. I just have to make up my mind not to castle queenside. I think castling queenside, I have no constructive plan, really. I like my position, but I have to do something. b4 must be right.
Aye, that is a move I overlooked, yes. If I had played the knight to f6, that move would have been impossible because I could just have taken it off. And now there comes rook to b1 and he wins a pawn back at b7. Now the best plan probably is to play f5 and knight to f6. But first of all, I must play a6 to prevent his immediate b5. I play a7, a6.
Well, now I can play rook b1 or I can play a4. a4 is probably more exact because in some cases I may even play a5, close the queen side, send the knight to a4 and to c5. On rook b1 he may play b5 immediately. I think a4 is better. Yes, a4.
Well, now b5 is not a threat. And it must be said, if he plays b5, then the a-file is opened. So I think I just play the knight to f6.
That is a threat, of course. I have to protect b4, so there's not much choice. No, rook b1, only move really. Rook b1.
Now he is threatening b5, as a matter of fact. The best thing probably is to change the knights immediately at e4. Then I know where I stand. So I play the knight to f6 to e4.
I don't mind exchanging the knights. Maybe I have to do it at once, because otherwise he plays f5. I think I could get a very good ending here. Knight takes, and queen takes, pawn takes. Then I play g4, so it's not so easy for him to play f5. Then the pawn on e4 is a little isolated, and even if I exchange it with f3, I get at least a very good pawn center. I think I must take this knight. Yes, knight takes e4.
Yes, that is quite obvious. I take it back with the pawn.
He didn't want to exchange queens. Now it's logical to go with the queen to c3 or c4. Queen c3 almost forces him to castle, because I'm threatening d5. Queen c4, if he castles, then later he cannot play f5. It probably all comes to the same, because in many cases my queen goes to c5. I could also go to b3, so that I can send the rook to c5. Not much difference. I think I play queen c3.
Yes, that is... He threatens d5 with an attack on the rook, so I have to castle away immediately.
Well, queen c5 I could play. He doesn't take that, of course. But I think it's just as well to castle so that he doesn't know my plans immediately. Either queen c5 or b5 is coming. So it's nice to castle first. I castle.
Yes, I had hoped to have some attacking chances with h5, h4, but now I see that queen c5 is in the position, and that is not such a pleasant move. I must be prepared to change there immediately. The ending is a little worse for me, but with 4 rooks it must be possible to defend it. So I have not much hope for chances for my side, so I must remain completely passive, and I prepare for a bad ending. Rook to d8.
Well, now I have to play either b5 or rook fc1 or queen c5. I think queen c5 looks very good. He doesn't take it, of course. And then when he comes with rook d5 later, my queen goes to b6. It's funny, after queen c5 he has no good move for the queen, because if he goes to d7 then the rook cannot go to d5. If he goes to c7 I play rook c1, and again he cannot play rook d5. So the queen goes somewhere else and doesn't protect b7. That looks very nice, because then I play rook fc1, and if my queen is kicked away from c5 it goes to b6 with the gain of a tempo. Yes, it looks very nice. Queen c5 must be the right move. Yes, let me see. b5 at once. No, I don't like it. No, queen c5.
Yes, I hardly see any other move than take it off. It has always the square b6 in this position, and that is a little too much. No, I must take off the queens, and the position is very closed. I have chances for defense. Queen takes queen.
Oh, that is nice. Really, he's not very ambitious here. Of course, I take with the b-pawn. B takes c5.
Now, as a matter of fact, my only weakness is b7. And the king side is probably a little weak. But I protect these pawns from the side, so let him try to win this. I play the rook to d7.
Yes, this is very nice. But I have to play g4 now. If I don't, then he plays h5 and maybe later f5, and then it's very difficult for me to do anything on that side. g4, that's logical. If I don't do that, then the 2 g-pawns are not working more than 1 g-pawn would. No, I must play g4.
Right, well, Bill Hartston will now take us through the next few moves, and what I must say, Bill, looks rather potentially a drawn position.
Yeah, but if you remember one of the games from the Korchnoi-Karpov match from the same opening, they reached an ending very similar to this, and Korchnoi won it with the white pieces. Black's difficulty is he's tied down to defense of this b7 pawn, and white has more pawns in the center. Larsen loves center pawns. His plan must be eventually to play f3 to undermine this pawn on e4, and then create a big mass of center pawns to advance, eventually create a passed pawn. Black's very passive. Let's see the next few moves. Well, he's supporting this pawn. This rook move both prepares to double on the b file, and it adds a defense to e3. You use the king actively in endings. Rook endings are always so difficult, and double rook endings even more so. Now here comes the first move of the plan. He's undermining this pawn on e4. And black, of course, must take it. Now black's lost his outpost in the center, and the white center pawns are beginning to do something. I don't think white's advantage is enough to win, but it's enough to create problems. When you're defending an ending, you try to exchange pawns, and Donna's doing that correctly. That could have been another weakness. So a pair of pawns come off. And at last the two rooks on the b file, so this needs another defence. Now it's Larsen who's exchanging pawns. He's trying to come in with his king. He needs to improve the position of his king. Also, incidentally, when these pawns are exchanged, the f pawn will be isolated. So black, is gaining control of this square, stopping the white centre advancing. It looks very difficult for white to make progress here. Giving a rook check, just to force the black king a little further back. Now another pawn exchange. Black takes back. And with just 2 rooks and 4 pawns each, it's very difficult to see how Larsen can make progress in this ending.
Both players reached the time control of 2 hours without any great difficulty getting their 40 moves in, but then they did have a slight problem. They've got to play all the rest of their moves in just 1 hour. And so far, all that's happened is that they've swapped off a pair of rooks, and we're going to join the game 40 moves later on, with Larsen white having just played his king from d3 to c4.
Now for the last 40 moves, he has done absolutely nothing. Just played his rook to all possible squares, f1, g1, h1, h8, b8, d8, d6, and his king to c4, d3, e2, f3, and one moment even at f4. And he has come back again, just trying to see if he can find the best position for his pieces. I think he has reached it now. The threat now is d4, d5. If I take that with the pawn, he plays the king to d4, and he has an excellent position because of the check at b6. I must prevent d5, or must fight against d5, by playing the rook to e7.
Well, my next move, there's not much doubt. I cannot play d5 at once. I must protect e3 with my rook. But it's funny how these long games, how you suddenly think of something that happened a long time ago. If my pawn had not gone from a4 to a5, I could now have the threat to play the king to b4, a5, b6. But well, I think he would then play his pawn to a5. No regrets, no regrets. My pawn is one step closer to the queening square on a8. That's why it went to a5 so long ago. Well, rook b3.
I am in a kind of Zugzwang now. When I go away with the rook along the 7th file, then he plays d4, d5. And the king can't go to e6. I must play the king to g5.
Well, I guess it's now or never. I was hoping he would be more in time pressure, but he still has 20 minutes. I don't think I can improve my position. It would be too much to go back with the king to d3. d5 is really very interesting. I must do it. It's the only chance. d5.
There, at last, the game is reaching for its climax. Now I must be very, very accurate. The idea was to check, and I see no other move. Rook to e4, check.
Yes, I thought he would do that. And, of course, king d3.
Now I take the pawn. c6 takes d5.
I don't know if this is a win, but at least I can say I got this far. Rook takes b7.
And I go behind his dangerous pawn, rook e4 to c4.
I think I must protect I can also play rook a7. He takes on c5. I take on a6. But then I think it is a clear draw. He plays, for instance, f4, and rook pawns hardly ever win. No, I think rook c7.
Now I wish when my king was at f6, then it was a dead draw. But I can play f4, changes an important pawn, but I have no time left. This is very dangerous, f4, because he plays the rook to c8, and I take the pawn at e3, and he plays c6. That looks very dangerous. I have terrible time trouble. I must go back. I must go back. King to f6.
Yes, now c6 is nothing. If I play rook c6 and take the pawn on a6, then I have gained one tempo, but in the meantime he improved his king's position. But I think it's the only move. If I play rook c8, he plays the king to e7 or e6. I must try rook c6 check.
Yes. King to e5.
Maybe it's an idea now to play rook c8. No, then he plays king e6. The only chance is to play with the a pawn now. Rook takes a6.
Rook takes c5.
I cannot improve my king. It's on its best square, so I have no choice. I must play rook up, rook a8.
That is very painful. That is horrible. Oh, that is horrible for me. Now he's threatening a6 and e7. And, I should have changed that last pawn there at e3. Oh, I regret it now that I haven't played f4 and instead of that played king to f6. Am I losing? There's only one way. I must go with the king to the pawn. King to d6.
Yes, he had no time for f4. At least that was something. What now? King d4 makes no sense. He checks me. So I hardly have another move. I must play a6.
I don't see anything else. I must go with the king to the dangerous pawn. King to c7.
What's happening? I thought he would play rook a5. Or maybe, no, it's the same, of course. It's, of course, exactly the same. What is now a7, king b7? I get some winning chances, maybe, no. No, there's only one move, that's rook f8. I mean, the rook has to go away, so why not go to f, where it threatens the pawn? Yes, rook f8.
Yes, this position is desperate because the pawn ending is lost. My two pawns against his one lose because his king is nearer. Well, I must do a move and I play rook to a5.
What's happening? I thought he would play king b6, but it was probably a win anyway. I would have won both f5 and d5 and his king would have been cut off. But I think now it's easy. What happens? a7. He takes it, I check him, and his king is then on a7 after the exchange of rooks. I play king d4, he plays king b something. I take on d5, and then I go to e5 and I take on f5, and I win with my last pawn. What is this? No trouble. It's okay. Yes. a7.
Well, I've only one move, king b7.
Oh, he didn't take it, but this is the same. I can play a8 queen, and instead of a king on a7, he has a king on a8. That is no improvement, of course. Yes, a8 queen. Check.
Yes, I'm horribly swindled here, yes. He wins the pawn ending with a whole pawn down. Yes, this is hopeless. I must resign.
Thank you.
Yes, that's terrible. I was robbed.
F4 was a
Yes,
draw, no?
F4 is the draw, but even after that.
Yes.
Even after that.
Bill, Bent Larsen says it was a draw. Hein Donner says he was swindled. We finish up with this position where one pawn is clearly going to beat two. Extraordinary game.
Absolutely extraordinary, yes. Let's just look at the finish again, the final position. Black, of course, has to take the queen on a8 with his rook. White takes again with the rook, exchanges rooks on a8. Black must recapture. And then we reach this really remarkable finish where these two pawns lose against just this one. The pawns are just a tasty snack for the white king. White plays king d4. The black king must head back towards the centre. White takes one pawn. These pawns can just do nothing. Black king moves another square closer to c7. White just heads over, e5. Another black king move to d7. And white takes the final pawn. And this leaves the white king in absolutely the perfect position just to shepherd his own pawn through to become a queen eventually. And white will win with just one pawn. Amazing finish.
Bill, the extraordinary thing about that game was the fact that there were those 40 or so moves in the middle where nothing at all happened.
Yeah, for Larsen it was an absolute triumph of patience, stubbornness and sheer optimism, I think.
How do you get away with that sort of swindle? Because really he admitted it was a draw and Donner wasn't best pleased by what happened.
Yes, it was a really sheer highway robbery, but what Larsen was doing, of course, was really just waiting for Donner to get into time trouble. I think he had the right plan right from the beginning. He knew that the only chance was a breakthrough in the centre, but it tires the opponent down, it wears him out a little if you go around in circles a bit for 40 moves.
Is it really sporting to do that? And when a position is clearly drawn? It's like waiting for your opponent to drop down dead of a heart attack or something.
Yes, it's pretty close. If you compare it with a heavyweight boxing match, maybe you save the good punches for the last rounds.
Right, well, what this game does make absolutely certain of is the fact that Hein Donner is not going any further. Bent Larsen, by this swindle of a win, really, goes to the top of his group. He's a clear half point ahead of Tony Miles. And Tony Miles has to play against Lothar Schmidt, needing a win. We might have a quick look, actually, at board Group A, because in Group A we have another Englishman at the top, Nigel Short, who's actually won that group outright. So we now have the position where if Tony Miles beats last year's Master Game winner, Lothar Schmidt, then we're going to have the first all-English final since the Master Game went international. If he only draws with Schmidt, then we're going to have a playoff with Bent Larsen. But anyway, next week all will become clear when Tony Miles of England plays Lothar Schmidt of West Germany. Until then, from all of us here in Bristol, good night.